Good morning. It's with pleasure that I present the topic on environmental impact assessment as a tool for sustainable development. In this post COVID, the debate is the developmental model that India and the world should take forward in the recent days. We've seen that rivers and air have become pure, flora and fauna have improved. We've seen reverse migration of youth to their villages, and especially when most of the sectors are not performing very well, the agriculture sector is really doing very well. And hence, there is an opportunity now wherein we could turn this issue into a positive thing and we could look at a different kind of a developmental model wherein we move from green revolution to evergreen revolution. Whereas green revolution focused only on food productivity, we are now talking more, that is food, nutrition, energy, and environmental securities through evergreen revolution, wherein we integrate trees with agriculture crops. So coming back to environmental impact assessment as a sustainable tool, we see now that there is a whole range of things that are happening in the environment, and we look at sustainability as a form of development. So EIA is one of the most cost effective method to eliminate or minimize the adverse impact of environment on the developmental project. EIA helps a large number of decision makers to analyze the effects of developmental activities on the environment well before the project itself is implemented, and later it helps in mitigation of the developmental plan. And hence, environmental impact assessment is a tool which helps in a sustainable development, basically through cost effective methods to minimize the impact, analyze the effect before implementation, mitigation of strategies, and also working out the ideal carrying capacity of the systems. So, why do we need the environmental clearances? We've been seeing world over in the recent days that the loss of environment has led to problems in development itself. In the Amazonian basin, we see in Brazil what's happening. In the African continent, the entire poverty can be linked to the loss in environment. In South Asia, mainly in Indonesia, we see that there is a lot of environmental issues that have impacted the developmental process. And in our own country here, we see that the Western Ghats, which is one of the biodiversity hotspots, has been impacted due to various developmental processes. So, coming to the Indian experience in environmental impact assessment, though the EIA came into existence during 78-89, it was only during 1994 that we really implemented this environmental impact assessment with four basic objectives: predicting the environmental impacts, finding out the ways and means to reduce the adverse impact, shape the projects to suit the local environment. This is one of the most important issues, and present the predictions and options to the decision makers. So as on today, there are about 40 sectors which need the environmental clearances from the government. So which projects need the environmental clearances? It's that all the new projects or activities listed in the schedule of the Environmental Impact Assessment Notification 2006 need the environmental clearances, as well as the expansion and modernization of the existing projects where there is upgradation of the capacities or thresholds also need the environmental clearances. So there are 39 categories under which we need the environmental clearances as on today. So coming to the categorization of the projects, so there are two major categories or broad categories, category A and category B, based on the spatial extent of the impact. Second, impact on the natural and man-made resources. And finally, impacts on human health. So what do we mean by these? These projects, that's category A projects, need mandatory environmental clearances and they do not undergo any screening process. Whereas in category B, we have B1 and B2. B1 needs mandatory EIAs, whereas B2s, they don't need the basic EIAs. And hence, it is category A and category B projects that undergo a complete EIA process, whereas B2 projects are excluded from the complete EIA process. And there is another situation where certain B projects located in eco-sensitive zones and other sensitive zones can be upgraded under specific situations depending on the area. So probably as on now, we all know that category A projects are cleared by the central government and category B projects are cleared at the state level environmental impact assessment. So the process through which all these projects go through are, there are 4 distinct stages, which I don't probably need to elaborate since there are other speakers who have already done. So now, what is very important now is the draft EIA notification 2020 that's come in place. And there's a lot of discussions happening related to the implementation of this draft EIA notification 2020. My further slides will discuss what are the major differences between the existing notification of 2006 and the draft notifications with respect to projects that mandatorily need the environmental impact assessments. In case of the mining projects, as of now, we have only for those which have 50 hectares. But now, in the draft, we have extended this from 50 to 100 hectares, which means only projects which are above 100 hectares of mining lease need the clearances. And in case of offshore and onshore, earlier all projects needed the clearances, but in the modified draft, exploration doesn't need the environmental clearances. In case of river valley projects, only those hydro generation projects above 50 megawatts needed, but now only those with above 75 megawatts capacity need clearances. In irrigation, earlier there was no irrigation projects that needed clearances as per the EIA 2006 Act, but now all irrigation projects which have above 50,000 hectares of cultivable area in the command area, they also need clearances. Under thermal power plants, earlier we needed environmental clearances for all projects above 50 megawatts capacity. Now this has been extended up to 100. In case of primary processing and material processing, there are no major changes. In case of material processing, in coke oven plants, earlier we had 250,000 tons capacity per annum. Now it's been extended to 0.8 million tons per annum. And in distilleries, earlier we had all molasses-based distilleries. Now what's in the new draft is all molasses distilleries above 100 KLDs, whereas earlier all cane juices, non-molasses based industries of more than 30 KLDs had to be taken. Now there are 2 separate categories: molasses based manufacturing units of 100 tons per day and non-molasses units based distilleries about 200 KLDs need the clearances. In service sectors, there are no major changes, whereas in highways, there are 2 major changes that are proposed. One is the new national highways. In this category, they have included, in addition to the new national highways, expressways and multimodal corridors and ring roads. And in expansions, whatever was the 20-meter right of way has been extended to 70 meters, and from 30 kilometers road length, it's been extended to 100 kilometers. In aerial ropeways, all projects earlier needed the clearances. especially those with in altitude of 100 meters and above. And as of now, all these have been exempted. And the last one in building and construction projects, earlier under B category, projects about 20,000 square meters and between 1 lakh 50 needed clearances. Now above 1 lakh 50,000 only need the clearances. So these are the major changes under projects which needed the environmental clearances. And hence, I try to end my presentation just giving few other points. What is the way forward for us? So we need probably a very independent authority under the EIA where it is sector based, and again the lack of data is a major issue here, and we need to have a centralized database for providing information, and we need to provide information to the communities in local languages. This is another issue, and it could be very pertinent as of now that the which projects that affect or alter the ecosystem need to go through the environmental clearances without any exceptions, and especially in ecological sensitive areas, we need to be very clear. And probably this is one of my last slides where there are issues related to monitoring and compliances and institutional arrangements. So what is probably intended is the EIA notification needs to build within an automatic withdrawal of the clearances if the condition of clearances are being violated. And we need to introduce more stringent punishments for non-compliances. And at the present, EIA notification limits itself only for clearances and doesn't go beyond that. And finally, to be very effective, the NGOs, civil society groups, and local communities need to build their capacities to use EIA notification towards a better decision process. And I end my presentation with this famous quote: forest and environment can meet all of man's need, but not his greed. And so I thank for the opportunities, and I look forward for a very fruitful interactions in this international seminar.